Wait, I need to add the details. Okay, we're back. Technical difficulties. All right, Michael, I'm going to add you back on.
Okay, we're back.
We're back. Technical difficulties.
I was like, this is my first time going live, so I was like, I hope that wasn't me.
Yeah, no, I did good yesterday. So we'll thug it out. We'll make it work.
Yeah, we'll get through
Let
it.
me in my comment again. And then your next panel is at what time's your next panel? Just curious.
It's at 6:30.
Cool. Okay, I'm pinning a comment. Comments. And drop. What's up, Nard? Drop. Okay, I'm gonna pin. Cool. All right, Wi-Fi, don't let us down. But yeah, so let's jump in. So National Publicist Day is this weekend, October 30th. Michael and I are both in comms and PR, and also like the music industry.
Yes,
I'm gonna
all
claim
of
it.
that.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
claiming it. So yeah, I wanted to have this conversation, to learn more about like your journey in music industry and also comms. And then also since we're in this digital social age of like marketing, like for anyone that's a music artist, like what should they be doing right now to market themselves?
Right.
I'm just curious, how did you? I know you started off interning at was it Atlantic Records?
Um, it was BET first and then Atlantic Records. So, but those are both my major internships in college.
Okay, so how did that? So what led you there? Were you like a music fan? Did you always see yourself kind of like working behind the scenes, or what brought you to music?
Um, well, it started out with me. I mean, I think everybody thinks they're like Beyonce or Whitney in the shower. So it's like I thought I would want to go into actually music or like playing an instrument. Um, but that wasn't my strong suit. Um, so I really realized that once I started opening like CD booklets and realizing that there's positions behind the artist, I was like, wow, like maybe I'll enter into that. But when it came to going to college, they didn't have like music industry majors or like cool majors that they do now. So I really had to kind of just figure it out as I go. Um, so I started out, you know, listening to my parents saying, "Well, you need to come back with a with either a doctor or a lawyer." And I'm like, "Well, I don't want to do
Oh
either one of
wow.
those." So we got to figure this out. Um, but yeah, I realized I want to be in music and entertainment, and I just was like, I'll have to figure out how I get there. So started applying to like Viacom. That's when I realized, like, oh my gosh, they own every network that I watch.
Right.
Um, and I got a random email saying, "Hey, this is BET. Can you start tomorrow?" And I'm like, "Okay."
Right.
I was like, "Well, what department is this?" They're like production management. And I'm like, I honestly don't know what that does, but I'm here for it. So I went and I was like, oh, like there's a whole department that's behind the hiring of hair and makeup, the hiring of camera and lighting, and the actual talent. So I was like, wow, like these are the real bosses behind the scenes. The talent is always, going to be put on the pedestal, but there's a lot of talented people behind the scenes. So that's really what gave me my crash course into the fact that I could be one of those people too.
We kind of had like a similar start because so I went to school in Kentucky, so there
Mhm.
was not any, wasn't like an entertainment hub, but I was like an hour away from Nashville.
Yeah.
So country music television was in Nashville, which is part of Viacom.
Hmm.
So I actually interned at country music television, like did the country music television awards and like worked on their shows, and then from there, that's how I ended up at MTV. So I can definitely relate.
Yes. Yeah, it takes you on a wild ride, but once you get into it, you're like, oh wow, like I can just maneuver throughout this. So
Right. So was that so you kind of like fell into production, and then you're like, okay, this is cool.
yeah,
Let me see where it goes.
I fell into it and I really liked it. I mean, BET specifically, like my mom will tell you, like I literally studied that network. Like every year, like when the BET Awards comes around, I'm like, I don't want to do anything. Like I want to watch the show. So being picked to be, their intern for that semester, I was like, this is surreal. So actually getting into it, I was like, I love this. Like I love feeling like I'm calling the shots behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So I mean, when I joined, that was when 106 and Park was still around. So getting to see
Oh,
like, yeah, it was
the
like
golden era.
right, or the farewell era, if we'll say. But that was like when it was like four hosts and it was
Yeah.
craziness. So I got to see it all. And then, those internships last only a semester. So I was like, I really love this. So my intern supervisor at the time, who's one of my great friends now, she was like, you should write a letter to the big boss and ask him to like come with us to LA and like stay on as like a PA for our department. And I would say that was one of the first times I learned how to be bold and ask for something because I was like, are you serious? Like he's gonna look at me like I'm crazy. But I was like, no, I guess I'll reach out. And I was like, I really love this experience and I would like to fly out to the BET Awards with you guys this summer. And then, when you like are sending like that anxious email and you're like, okay, let me press send. And I ran away.
Right. See
And
what
then,
happens.
yes. And then he hit me back like, actually, yes, like you'll have to cover this, but we'll cover that. And I was like, cool, I'm hopping on the next flight. Um, and from there, I continued to work with BET for the remainder of my college experience. Um, and that kind of that actually did lead me to my Atlantic Records internship. So it was like a ecosystem. Yes, in a true ecosystem. Like when they tell you that the business is small, it really is. So the person who got me my Atlantic internship was the best friend of my intern supervisor at BET. So shout out to Rhea, shout out to Brianna Harrison, who's at Atlantic Records. Like those are the two that gave me my major start, and it went from there.
That's what's up. I have to shout out Michael, who I see in the, or not, sorry, Drew. I'll just
Yes,
comment.
yeah,
Drew, no, but it's funny because that's how
that's
we
how we
actually
met. Yes,
got connected at Warner. And I can't remember exactly. I don't know if I know I was meeting with Drew. I don't know if I was pitching him something and then we all met, but full circle,
yeah,
love it.
right. It was like you were in his office. He was like, "Well, come in. It's some common thread here." And then
Yeah.
from there, I feel like I literally when your name pops up, I'm like, Kenneth is like always on the move. Like I'm gonna see him out. Like I always see you. So ever since then. So yeah.
No, I love it. So from, starting off in production, so how did you end up at a record label? Because one thing, so now that I've been doing PR for a music artist, I've been kind of wanting to know more about A&R. Like what does the A&R's week look like? Like what is their job?
And honestly, A&R is such the cool job. So everybody wants to be an
Yeah.
A&R. But because what you see is like, or what you think is like, oh my gosh, they go to the club, like they have the most exciting job ever. They get all of the tickets, like, But that's true. But there's actually real work behind it, and you actually have to be a true strategist. I mean, starting out as an intern in the label, I learned that A&R and marketing are literally the hubs of the label because you need the music to sell and you need the talented people in order to sell the music. Um, so when it comes to A&R, of course you are like out scouting people, but today it's mostly like you looking through your phone. Um, there became a point where we were like, here's the Excel spreadsheet for the week of all of the data. So it's like, thinking about the 80s or 90s when you're thinking of like LA Reid, Babyface, like they found Tony, they found TLC. Um, I would like to think that that's still possible today, but most of it is like the computer is the A&R. And you really have to be strategic when it comes to finance and budgeting. Like, how much are you going to advance this person? What's the recording budget?
Wow,
You got
so
to
the
think
A&R
that
is responsible for all of that.
there is a separate department called A&R administration, but they work hand in hand. So you have to, in my experience, like my undergrad degree was in finance. So I always knew like whatever I get into, numbers will be important. So throughout my career, I've always aligned myself with being creative and also logistical because they go hand in hand. So you need to know like if you're signing somebody for $4 million, you got to prove that that person is worthy. So you really have to check and see like what's the stats like on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify. And then there's a whole system that kind of predicts what this person, they forecast the artist before you even sign. So it's a whole formula. So learning that, I was like, wow, this is a really important job.
So let's
And it,
dive, let's, no, 'cause you just said something, I don't know, like spark the light bulb. So let's dive into that when it comes to, so being an A&R, and now that we're in this digital age where, you know, people are getting signed off Instagram and online and on
yeah.
TikTok, how, so what does that mean for, you know, artists today? Like you mentioned in the 80s and 90s, like an A&R would go out and like find talent, like a Tony or something like that. So
Yeah.
how has the industry like shifted from what I would think is more organic to now, you know, social? Like, how, what's that look like?
Well, I personally still believe there is authenticity and just organic nature in social, but it just depends on what side you're looking on. So, like today, an artist will not have the standard start of like, oh my gosh, we're like putting them through development and sending them down to Atlanta with the hottest producers. Today it's like, oh my gosh, 2 weeks ago, this person recorded a song a cappella in their bedroom and now they're signed to a major label. Let's figure it out. So basically, it's about building the strategy in the moment. Like a lot of times people feel like you have to do months and years of planning, but today we don't have time for that. So when you get an artist and they're working, you have to continue to make sure they're visible. So a lot of people think it's about like doing something that's been done before, but it's really about honing in on what the artist is interested in. Like when it comes to even maybe reels or TikToks or whatever, people are like, what should we do? What can we do? Can you teach us? And I'm like, well, Lizzo was on there eating watermelon and mustard. But I mean, she's on tour right now. So, I mean, that just shows her personality. So I was like, what does the artist like to do? If they like to cook, they can get on, any platform, whether it's TikTok or Instagram, and cook. And then their music can be in the background. Like sometimes people overthink things these days, but it's really about being organic. But for so long, we've had a system that's like, this is how it is. So people don't believe that. Like when people come to me and they're like, how do I like slide you my song so you can get it? You know?
Right.
And I'm like, I promise you, I can't do that. And they were like, well, how did like, Ice Spice or like these other trends, how did they come up? And I'm like, organic. The people loved it. there's no other interference. But people are still kind of trying to grasp that concept.
So what if you're like an artist that, let's say a little bit old school, to where you're not really heavy on social media? Does that
Mm.
hinder your ability to really, get signed or be successful? Like how much does, that impact your ability to make it as an artist?
Especially today, it doesn't at all. Um, there's, I mean, in my work, there's been stories of people who have tried when they were younger, and they're now like 60, 70, and their song went viral, like randomly. So it's honestly about the talent and the strategy behind it. Um, just as we have like examples of artists that aren't even active anymore, like like there was a trend for like, well, they're active, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like they're not in the mainstream anymore. Like Stokely and Mint Condition, like Guy, all of these artists are like kind of finding new successes today because of TikTok or other social platforms. So there's still opportunities for honestly every level of artist, whether you're emerging, mid-level, or or like legacy or established. There's a lane for everyone. It's just about doing it, doing it organically this time and not trying to basically play into a formula because we see that these days the formula or like the cookie cutter model doesn't really fit for everyone. So it's important to just do what's important to the artist, and it works every time, as I see.
I'm waving. Um, no, that's cool. No, because sometimes I think, well, I mean, I feel like now you hear a lot about, artists being signed off of TikTok or off social media. So I'm always like, well, damn, what about the artists that's like really, really dope, but maybe they're not marketing themselves in that way? Like, is there a space for them? But it's like kind of,
They they have to really put the imposter syndrome to the side because some people are like, well, I would never break through that algorithm or that platform. But it's like, well, how do you think the other people did? Like, no one knew who a lot of these poppin' artists were until they put their music out there.
yeah.
Um, but I always tell people like, think of a strategy that works for you. So I have an example of a really good friend of mine named Jawan who is really, doing his R&B thing, and he's like really emerging in the space. And he was like, "What do I do on TikTok or honestly just social in general?" And I was like, "Just like post like when it comes to what you're doing around your music, whether that's you posting like you in the studio doing this, doing breaking down the stems, whether you're posting you behind the scenes of the music video, um, whether you're like telling people like how much your ex hurt you because and that's how you got to the song. Like it's just about
Tell
the
the story.
basics. What'd you say?
I said, tell the story, like the storytelling.
Yes. Yeah, literally. And that's at every level. Like for so long people think that they have to be, you know, all the way there.
Yeah.
But I mean the space is continuing to be democratized, so there's room for everybody.
So I'm curious, going back to your time working for the record label, because I know you like worked on some projects with like Meek Mill and K Michelle, Wale. So what? At one point in my career, I think I wanted to work. Well, when I was interning at MTV, for whatever
Mhm.
reason, I thought, oh, like music industry, when really it's a television, it's a
Yeah.
television network. There's not any really music going on.
Mhm.
So, uh, yeah, I mean, I'd love to learn, like, hear about like your experience working at a label and like what that, yeah, how that experience was.
It was like I say, BET and Atlantic are like my crash courses. They gave me the crash course into TV, crash course into, music industry. So when I got there, it was the first day they were like, uh, we need you to go get our coffee, and we need you to go to get tickets to see Serena at the what is it, the U.S. Open at that time. And then they were like, we need you to go down to deliver them to Jay's house. And I was like,
Wait
Jay
to do
who?
what?
They were like, we need you to go deliver them to Jay's house. And I was like, well, who is Jay? And they're like, Jay-Z. And I was like, what? So I did all of that in one day. I mean, of course, he didn't come to the door, but the fact that they trusted me enough to do something like that, that was just like, I guess I had passed their test, and then it was off to the races from there. So when it comes to like Meek Mill, K Michelle, Wale, I really supported like the marketing assistants and the coordinators on like what's happening in the streets. Like, of course, you're here in the label and you know the data, but I'm a college student, so what do I think about Meek Mill? What is a campaign we can do for no money? You know, and one of the highlights from that experience was the fact that I did actually get to work with PNB Rock, who just recently passed away. Um,
Oh, wow.
when it came to him coming to my college campus, I was able to convince my boss at the time, Marsha St. Hubert, who's still the SVP at Atlantic, or EVP, I don't know. And I was like, hey, we want PNB Rock to come and do like a meet and greet, and we also want him to perform at our spring concert opening for Nas. And I was like, now I we don't have any budget for this, but it'll be great exposure. She agreed, he agreed, and he pulled up with his manager to St. John's University in Queens. And me and my counterpart, um, Happy at the time, we had a meet and greet in our student union, and there was about maybe 75 kids that came. He
Oh,
signed his mixtapes and T-shirts and things like that. Um, and it was just a great experience. Like they allowed me to literally bring what I was doing at the label to my campus. And that was important because I never wanted to feel like I was too much away from school or I was too focused on school that I wasn't seeing what was outside. So I was always able to merge my college life and my, work experience. So that was a highlight of the label life. I also got to learn what goes into recording contracts at that point because I'm like, wow, the label has a hand in everything, especially today with like, 360 deals and things like that. So I was like, wow, like this is what it takes to get to the album release party. Or like when you're running an artist around, like as a PR person, like this is all coming out of a budget. Like I said, I majored in finance, so I'm just like, okay, somebody's paying for this, and it ends up in the artist. So
yeah.
that taught me a lot. And that's honestly, I'm not trying to skip, but that's how I kind of got into being a professor because I wanted to teach people the reality of um, of what it is to be an artist and also an employee in the music industry.
No, I love that. So let's like dive into that a bit more because I mean you kind of like had your hand in like all these different areas. So one, like how did that come about? Like you were you interested in teaching and um,
Um,
yeah, what led you there?
well, like I said, in my experience, I didn't really have many cool professors. So I was just like, well, anybody that was in entertainment worked in it in like 1975, which great knowledge. But I'm like, they're not teaching about any of the new business models that will help me. So I was like, all right, this was at the time, I was working in A&R at Warner. So I had graduated college, and this was probably my second or third year in the A&R department. And I was like, there is an elevation from here. I want to go back and get my master's. And everybody around me was just like, you work at the label, like, you made it, you don't need that. And I'm just like, well, maybe the people that are already at the SVP level don't, but I'm just starting, so I'm gonna need some uniqueness to my name. So I was like, all right, when it comes to a master's degree, I want to have fun. So I was like, I will go and get it in music business, and my goal with that is to teach. Not only to teach, but to just kind of brush up on true music business essentials, like what it really takes to make money in the industry and how you, like I said, I mentioned like Tony Braxton and TLC, and those are like two of my inspirations for like helping people to not get scammed or just to understand what it is when you're signing a contract. Um, so yeah, from there, I literally, fast forwarding a bit, I graduated with my master's while in 2020, December 2020. So went through the pandemic, went through 2.5 years of working full time at a record label and did my master's at the same time. Um, and then by the time I got the master's, I was already feeling like I said, tech has taken over. So it was important for me to go with the trend. So I was like, all right, the record label will always be there. I can always go back. It'll always be an institution, but I want to go and try something innovative, something different. And I will say, like, my current role with TikTok and my professor, like, they kind of like found me at a time where I needed them. So when I was ready to start, you know, teaching at universities, I picked a list of 10 and I found the deans of those schools and I was like, hey, here's my bio, here's my resume,
Right.
this is everything I've done. And I was like, do you guys have openings? Like I said, I learned from the first opportunity, like to ask. It's either a yes or no. So I was like, hey, I hit up like, NYU from NYU to like the Cooney schools, like everybody. I got one response. And that response was from where I am now at Rowan University. And they were like, yeah, we love your experience. And can you come in 2 days to teach a class for demonstration and prepare?
2 days.
Yeah. So I was like, no, I've done guest lecturing before, but I've never done anything like this before. So I was mortified.
Yeah.
But I was like, wow, well shit, I guess it's my time now. So I got it together in like 2 days. I was sweating bullets because I was nervous. Like, college students are the worst when it comes to just staring at you judging. So I was like, all right, I got to get past all of this. Um, I had to teach a whole class the whole time. I did a presentation on how like social media is influencing the A&R and release process for
Yeah.
artists. And I used like Coil Ray, Erica Banks, and all of these like, female rappers as an example. And the class loved it. The deans loved it, and they were like, "Let's sign a contract today." So that's where I am now. Every Tuesday and Thursday, teaching at
Yeah.
Rowan University, music business, and then I also teach hip hop culture. So it's just a gift to have both of these things happening at one time, like working for like, a brand that's like so fast and so huge right now, and
Yeah.
then being able to give back to students that really want to learn, that real time information. So
And it like
I'm
sets up kind
grateful.
of like a pipeline between, the students and,
Yeah,
you know, TikTok market,
absolutely.
the real
Yeah,
world. So
all of
now
it.
that like since the music industry's become more democratized where, you can market as a music artist, you could like market yourself and get discovered and get signed. How do you think that benefits more artists? Do you think it makes it harder? How's that had like what's the biggest effect that's had on the music industry?
Uh, it depends on who you ask, but I honestly think it's like made a lot of people happy, and it's also like pissed off a lot of corporations. So if you ask an artist, I think it's like more open, more of an open lane than ever to get out there. Like you don't have the like gatekeepers, or the gatekeepers aren't as powerful as they were. So you can get out there and just start. Like, it might be cliche, but like just do it is really a great tagline, because now you can just put it out there. You don't have to like answer to anyone. I honestly think it's great. I mean, there will always be like legalities involved. So that's why it was important for me to learn the finance and legal side of this. So when I got my master's, it was very heavily based in the legal side of the music business. And that's where I'm like, oh my gosh, like it seems like it's such a difficult thing to grasp. Like, what are people fighting over? But when you study music business, you realize that there's like two revenue streams. And it's like you're either going to get it from the master or you're going to get it from the songwriting. And that's like people are really just chasing copyright in the music industry. So the record label will always, or if you are a major artist and signed, they'll always own the song recording or the master. But when it comes to writing, the artist, if you do write your music, you do have the opportunity to, keep your publishing off of your writing. So, but I learned that there's two streams, and we're basically like basing this whole industry off of that. And that's honestly me trying to make it simple, and it's more complicated, obviously, but it's really like pretty simple business wise. And with these different, but money involved, it becomes complex. But to answer the question, I do think artists just have most opportunity they've ever had today.
So you brought up songwriting. So I wanted to ask kind of a personal question. Because I actually know, and I don't know like how extensive you work with like songwriters, but
Hmm.
I work with someone who's a songwriter who kind of basically was in the camp with Bad Boy around the making the band era, and was kind of like learning as he went. Didn't really know the ins and outs of music business, but was extremely talented at songwriting and actually wrote like a lot of the hooks for some of the songs that actually
Mm.
became hits for like Sean Kingston, Danny Kane. So if you're say you're not going like the artist route, but more like the songwriter route,
Hmm.
what does that look like? Is that more like an organic relationship that you would have like with an artist? How would you actively pursue a career in songwriting? Not to put you on the spot.
Mm. Um,
Because it's so elusive.
is honestly what I've
Yeah.
experienced is like most songwriters are artists that like had their stuff on like SoundCloud, or like it was out
Yeah.
there. And people are like, oh shit, this person is really dope.
Right.
And this is not everybody's story, but a lot of times it's like, all right, I'll come in and go to the studio with them. And then you think that you're coming in to be like a feature, but you end up being the writer. So it's a lot of it is multi-level. Like I just went to my first South by Southwest conference this year in Austin, and people camp out at these events and they're like, "Hey, here's my QR code." Like the whole,
Yeah.
the guerrilla marketing route, the grassroots thing. But also it's about the relationships too, which everything is.
Yeah.
So it's just
And
really about
marketing
like,
yourself, right? Like
hmm?
marketing yourself on social media.
Yeah,
Yeah.
literally. Putting every song, every demo out there, because somebody's gonna like something. Um, like some of my favorite people who started as songwriters, thinking of like Seventh Street, or like Elijah Blake,
So,
like those are really great examples of how like, or thinking of also Lucky Day's story. Um, he had been writing for people for I think maybe a decade before he even popped off. So I'm just like, the songwriter side of things is a less glamorous for sure.
yeah.
But when it comes to like the checks, you
Right.
can definitely, that's like the copyright law in the US is like it lasts for your lifetime plus 70 years. So that's if you base your life off 100 years, that's 170 years that you and your family and their family own something. So that's how you build like the generational wealth, which is, the topic today, in these times. But people don't understand like this is actually something that goes into the Library of Congress with your name on it. So definitely never give up your like intellectual property, unless you have spoken with a trusted music business expert or more importantly an attorney.
No, that makes sense. I feel like what the biggest takeaway I've been having from these conversations I've been having this week is one, like personal branding and marketing. Because I mean, it feels like it's the gateway to really everything. If you're a songwriter and you want to break into the artist and develop relationships, market your music, utilize TikTok, utilize social media. If you're really any type of creative or entrepreneur, the magic seems to be in the marketing, like
Literally,
across
that's
the
why I
board.
say whether you want to work, whether you want to be in front of the camera or behind the camera, I realize as somebody that's in the music industry, sometimes it's the same plight as an artist. I mean, we may not be dealing with millions of dollars. Some of them are, not me yet, but it's just like you deal with a lot of politics and all of that stuff. So it's really about how you pivot and market yourself through every obstacle that comes your way. Because just like artists have their ups and downs, creatives and executives behind the scenes go through it a lot too, or sometimes even more because you're actually like supposed to be a visionary behind these decisions for artists and the company. So you have to try to make the corporation and the creatives happy at the same time. That doesn't always work out.
Yeah.
Um, so it's really about keeping a person, like you said, keeping a personal brand and direction for yourself. Like I have this piece of paper, like my journal, I guess you can call it that. I, every year I kind of write down what I'm looking for in work, personal life, and I kind of just like go back and I'm like, wow, like this, I manifested this. But it's important to kind of write down your direction because like there'll be so many things that like try to get you off the path or make you feel like, oh, I did come far, but maybe I'll just do something else. And it's like, no, you've come too far to change. So just go back and look at, I call it my manifesto. And I'm like, this is what I set out for myself. And I know it looks like this right now, but let's keep going. So that's some advice for people out there who, whether you want to be in front or behind the camera.
No, I love that. And I know you have a panel after this, so I'm gonna ask one more question.
Mhm.
So like so you worked in production, you worked, at the record label, now you're on like PR comms, and even, a professor in teaching. So in all of those aspects, what would you say has been like, I guess not, yeah, like your favorite project or like something that you're most proud of that you've worked on?
Um, I will say, aside from being a professor, which is like it feels like I'm giving back to the community or like giving back to my younger self in a way because I'm like I didn't have anybody like me. So when it comes to my class, I'm like so obsessed with my students because I'm like, wow, they're like super cool and young and they're hungry. But when it comes to projects, I actually, at my full-time job, I have a really great skill set with like creating like panels and like speaking events. So I had my hand in a part of a larger initiative at VidCon this year, and I was able to create two panels that were focused on music. And something that I realized is hip hop is always kind of like used, but it's not like given that. Well, I mean, and a lot of times compared to other genres, it's not given that elevation. And I personally am like a female rap enthusiast, so I love all of them. Like I feel
Yeah,
like, especially today, the ladies are definitely coming harder than the fellas.
yeah,
So I was like, I want to do a panel with female rappers or women in hip
I
hop,
love
and I
that.
want them to talk about their journey and how like today's space is more open compared to before. So I got together like Dochi, Baby Tate, and Mona Leo, who are some
Oh, they're
really,
all dope.
yes, literally some really popping, female rappers today. And I was like, I really want them to get here and talk authentically about how, you know, social media has allowed them to feel more comfortable with building their artistry and fan base. And when they got to the actual site, I didn't realize that they were all friends already. So it just worked out, you know? So, in
Love
partnership with, we have an amazing team that actually does the artist relations, or, we work hand in hand. So it was just great to partner with that. So I had a panel for women in hip hop, and then I also had a panel for like new school of hip hop, and that included Lakia, who's also really dope.
Oh,
Um,
look, he is dope, yeah.
yeah, and a couple other artists, and I was just like, this is a dream come true. To see, to go through my Spotify, and I'm seeing like, I just listened to Mind Your Business, and she's speaking on my panel today. So that was a highlight of my career so far. Um, Aside from just the weekly gift I get of going to the university and teaching. So I just
I'm gonna
always
wrap
wanted.
soon, but we can't talk about female rappers without Nicki. So I want to get who I love, but I want to get your opinion because I consider her the queen of rap, and I wish she
Me
would take
too.
the Beyonce route and just know that she's the queen and just like shut her mouth. But
Well,
what being
you're
on
not gonna have the
BT
barbs coming at me now.
was, I mean, I thought we can talk freely.
No, but yeah, I
Like
definitely
what?
am a really big fan of Nicki as well. I consider myself a barb too. More of a grounded one though. But you
Same.
know, when it comes to artistry, there's no one like her. But it
I
also goes back to like personal branding and what we're discussing. And like something I learned as a fellow fire sign is like you want to be emotional or just come at somebody all the time, but you have to really be secure in yourself. And I'm like, I'm confident that the fans and the people that love her are like, yo, you don't have to do any of this.
yes, that's how
But
I feel. Like,
but you don't know. But sometimes I'm like, I put myself in her shoes, and I'm like, wow, you don't really know what she went through when it comes to like now all of these younger girls have support because there's so many of them. But
yeah.
then if you're coming in and you're really making a force and like people are looking at you like, I don't know, or she thinks she this or that, you really doing it by yourself and you kind of build this wall up. So now that you're like, basically, I consider her like the Jay-Z of female rap.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of like we expect her to be Mother Teresa, but I don't
I
necessarily
get it.
think I didn't see many people doing that for her, and I can see how that creates a scorn woman in that space. So I
Well, we
like,
love Nicki. We love Nicki regardless.
yes, I
She
love
definitely
her
deserves
dearly.
a Grammy, I would say.
Yeah, and that honestly goes into the music business part, learning like who votes for the Grammys, who submits for the Grammys. Like those are things that the artist has no control over. So
Yeah.
it's about, I always laugh because I'm like, I think of her first song, Seeing Green, where she's like the corporate giants and machines. And every time I have a problem, like whether it's, whatever job it is, I'm like, the corporate giants and machines are trying to get me. But but no, yeah, it's politics with all of this stuff. So she's someone that's not like a Beyonce who's like gonna just probably scream about it at home with her husband. She's a Sagittarius, so she's gonna go out there and put it all on the table no matter how she looks. So I don't know. I do hope that she does get her vindication, and I do hope like all of the rap girls have peace one day because it's like it's chaotic and we don't. I feel like they're really talented
The
and
female
doing the
rappers are,
work.
I feel like.
You said what?
No, and I really feel like, there is a wave of like female rappers. They're just like
Yeah,
taking over.
now it's like some consider it oversaturated, but I think it's honestly it adds to the pot. Most of them are talented, so why not? We have many male rappers that aren't, so
Love it. Well, this has been great. I feel like I've definitely received some gems. I feel like, again, it's really, what I've taken away is that it's really all into about like the market. Sorry, I'm looking at the questions. But I feel like it's really about marketing and personal branding. So Jay asks, what's up, Jay? What would you say the top two most effective ways upcoming artists can market themselves are? I'll let you take that.
um, like I said, be authentic. So that's like the overall umbrella. Um, so think about like realistic goals. And every business planner always like you have to have like specific and measurable goals. So if you get on, excuse me, if you get on your platform and you're like, I want to have 1,000 followers, use that as the first benchmark. So you're not like overwhelming yourself or like comparing yourself to other artists. Like, let's say you want to have a benchmark of 1,000, do that, and then have another. And through that, you're doing things authentically. Like I said, if you like skateboarding, get on there and show us a tutorial and also show us your music. Like, we're all in this era like multi-hyphenate. So like I'm running around like a Jamaican with 7 jobs. So like everybody everybody has the opportunity to do everything. For so long, they all said like you can't be, a jack of all trades. You know that saying. So I'm like, the people that we look up to, they all have multiple jobs. Like Oprah doesn't do one thing, Jay-Z doesn't do one thing. So why would we sit here and think that one thing is going to get us to the finish line? And then otherwise, I would say as an upcoming artist, social media wise, you pretty much do have to have a consistent schedule of posting. And then off the platform, I think it's just about attending every single event you can that you will be in the room with people that you need to help you. So whether that's at like we were just at CultureCon, like that's a great opportunity for you to meet
Also,
people.
Tom was dope.
I came from that so inspired. And then like there's a program called Digilog, which is like for for upcoming artists and executives to share knowledge. Like there's a lot of different programs out there, but I just suggest like getting your own personal social media strategy, but also getting your networking strategy. Sometimes we feel like since we're on the phone or computer, we don't talk to people anymore. But like, even I'm learning, like, you got to get outside and meet these people. Like, otherwise, you'll just be another robot behind the screen. So get out there.
Same. I'm learning like it's
And
also like building community.
mhm, literally,
I know you have to, I know you have to jump soon. We'll have one more question. So Sean Moore asks, what steps should a person take to make themselves marketable to others, like yourself, to network and potentially connect? I feel like just jump in,
don't.
right?
Oh, one other gem that I will say that I learned is people love talking about themselves. So don't be scared to reach out to people to ask for advice. Most people will say yes because once you get that person on, they'll give you all of the knowledge you need. But if you feel like you're not worthy enough, or you feel like, oh, they'll look at you like, who is this person? A small amount will, but a lot of people will simply just want to do it because they want to help the next person. So don't be afraid to reach out. I do suggest thinking of something more strategic than saying like, here's my music. I think it's more opportunity to like connect person to person. Like this is a whole business ecosystem. So the music is always going to be there, but like, can you get some gems from this person on the business side? Like, hey, can I, set up like an informational interview with you for like 30 minutes just to learn about more about what you do? Or do you have any like, are you looking for any specific type of music right now? Or like something like that. Like I said, organics, authenticity is really something that set someone apart. I personally don't like to be like manufactured. So if someone is approaching me too perfectly, I'm just like, they're trying to sell something, or what do they want? But if you're
Yeah.
literally trying to get to know something, like, why not? So it's just about the strategy of how you approach people and the fact that you actually do. So just, make sure you press send on those, those messages that you want to hop in, people's DMs for, or LinkedIn messages. Like, I don't totally recommend it because somebody's going to respond.
And I feel like this is like an example of that. Like we met at Warner when I was meeting with Drew, and just always kept in touch. And when there was synergy, there's synergy. And now started kind of like personal branding, and reached
Yeah,
out to you, and now here we are. So
exactly. So that was like probably 4, 5 years ago at this point, I think. Or
wow.
so I'm just like, that just goes to show like we don't have to, when it comes to like maintaining a relationship, like we don't have to like be inauthentic and reaching out to each other. Like there'll be a reason for us to work together. That doesn't mean we like speak every day or we're like, hi, how's everything? Like,
Right.
sometimes that's just not realistic, but when it matters, or when it makes sense for us to collab, like that's the nature of a true connection and relationship. And that's something that I appreciate. Because like we're busy people. So the fact that we can, do things together like this is really important. So that is an example of how we met years ago and we're like fostering what we've done. Like we didn't get to talk about it, but we worked on like with Kid Ken and like stuff like that. So we were
Right. Right.
able to connect the dots with, it may not have been at the label, but it happened at my next job. So it's
Right.
just like it works out. And
Love that.
I know we have to end, but if anybody like has any more specific questions, feel free to reach out, and hopefully I can answer those for you guys. But this was an amazing opportunity and I'm really grateful. So thank you.
Yeah, and thank you, Michael, for hopping on and dropping those gems.
No problem.
Um, yeah, and if anyone has questions for me, feel free to reach out. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll be doing this all week.
Yes, happy National Publicist Week and
Right.
day.
All right,
All
y'all.
right. Have a good one. Talk to you later. Bye bye.